Hi, I'm Joe from Reclaiming Jesus, and I'm going to have to ask you to forgive me right up front. I'm battling a cold, and it's causing me to stumble over some words and have a scratchy voice. But I was excited to get up this new feature called A Few Minute Message. And basically, it's just going to be some short sermons that I videotape and put up on my blog. And they're going to be about God, Jesus, current events, those kind of things. So I hope you enjoy it. Today, I'm talking about the first sin. Now, we've all hear the story of Eve taking a bite of an apple, and that gets Adam and Eve kicked out of Eden. And then those sins pass on to mankind, and we all suffer the punishment for that. Well, that is true, and it's very basic. But I think one of the things that we overlook is there was a multiple of sins going on at that time. Now, in Genesis 2, verse 17, God tells Adam that you cannot eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or you'll surely die. And that is true, and that's what happened. But what everyone forgets is Eve wasn't created at that time. I believe it was one or two verses later, God creates her. So it never tells us in the Bible that God spoke to her directly about that tree. So I'm assuming that it's left up to Adam, as a spiritual leader of her as her husband, to let that information go, to let her know, to educate her on that. And I don't think he did a good job. So I think what happens is he lets down God there, which could be a sin or it could just be something minor. I think it's a sin because he didn't live up to the duties he was given. And that's a debate for other people who are a lot smarter than me. But I think what happened there is that was a sin which snowballed into Eve discussing in chapter 3 of Genesis with the serpent, where she says, we can't even touch it or we'll die, meaning the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which God never said you couldn't touch it. He just said you couldn't eat it. So I think there she got misinformation from Adam, and I don't think she was lying to the serpent and making things up. I just think that's what she thought, which would have been Adam's job to educate her. So I think what happens here is you get a dropping of the ball in spiritual matters, which leads to lying and deceit and more problems. So ultimately, Adam and Eve get into a lifestyle of sin, which gets them kicked out of the Garden of Eden. Now, I believe only one sin would have got them kicked out of Garden of Eden, just like one sin will keep us out of heaven, unless we accept, the shed blood of Jesus Christ and cover that sin for us. But I think ultimately the sin ball got rolling in the Garden of Eden, and then they were removed, which caused the downfall of man, and we're suffering today for that sin. I mean, we're caught in our own sin. I know I am. So I think it will do us well to go back and look at the creation account and the fall of Adam and Eve in the account of Genesis. Do some study, maybe read up with some more learned men than me, and then talk about it with people in your church and your pastor and your spiritual mentors. I think it makes for good conversation.